From the Telegraph, Trump to be denied address to Parliament on state visit. U.S. President will not be given the honor enjoyed by Barack Obama or Emmanuel Macron. Telegraph understands. I think the U.S. should bring regime change to the U.K.
I agree. We'll welcome you as liberators.
Let's go!
Actually,
all right.
We don't have a single good political party in the UK right now. Genuinely, I'm not joking. I'm not overstating it.
You would be able to do nothing if we did invade.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, I mean, our army is the lowest number since the Napoleonic Wars. I think we only have a couple of thousand active troops.
Trump, if you're listening, this is going to be easy.
Are we ready for an entirely Muslim state in our country yet? I don't know.
The first Sharia state admitted to the
in
Union?
England? Are things sort of shifting politically?
Shifting in what sense? So in 2024 we had the last election. Labour got in on what Rupert Lowe calls a landslip. So they got a landslide majority, but with fewer votes than Jeremy Corbyn lost by in 2019. They are the most unpopular government on record. They're brand new low. It turns out the space beneath the bottom of the barrel, and that's where Keir Starmer's sitting right now. The reason he's probably doing this, by the way, so there's a parliamentary recess in the middle of September. That's when he's inviting Trump. It's because he and all of his members of his cabinet have slated Trump relentlessly. So David Lammy, who is the thickest man in Britain, who's our foreign secretary, once wrote an article in Time magazine when Trump was first president, calling him a member of the KKK, a neo-Nazi, a misogynist, and now you're expecting him to meet with the Trump administration, have a cordial conversation, and they're worried that half of the Labour government is just going to walk out in protest if Trump does address Parliament, so that's why they're not having it. So Labour are in power. They're currently kowtowing to the Muslim lobby because they've traditionally relied on the Muslim vote, and about 5 of their cabinet members, three to 5, are probably going to lose their seat at the next election because they only won by a couple of hundred votes because Muslim independent candidates ran on a purely pro-Palestine ticket in that area and almost won. There were 4 Muslim pro-Palestine MPs elected at the last election. The former leader of the Labour Party, Jeremy Corbyn, is about to start a new party with them and take Labour MPs along with them. So they're hemorrhaging votes to their left. As far as the right in Britain, as far as it exists, the last Conservative government just delivered net 1 million immigration every year. You guys have that for the whole of your country. We're the size of New York State, so we have the same level of legal migration as you guys did under a Conservative government. They got thrown out with their worst record in 100 years, and they've instead appointed Kemi Badenoch to lead their party rather than Robert Jenrick. Robert Jenrick resigned from the previous government over their immigration record, so he's quite principled. Kemi Badenoch is... Well, she was born from Nigerian parents using health tourism, which is how she got her citizenship, lived in Nigeria, then America, identifies as a first-generation immigrant, has basically been propped up by the party for her entire career, and in her maiden speech, she wanted to remove the caps on student and working migration. She also identifies not as British, but as Yoruba, and calls other Nigerians her ethnic enemies. Brilliant patriotic leadership. Then you have Reform. Reform are topping the polls. That's Nigel Farage's party. Nigel Farage, about 2 days ago, gave an interview saying, I am to the left of the country on immigration. Nigel Farage... Yeah, I know.
What?
Most Americans don't know this. Nigel Farage has spent the last year betraying his base. Entirely betraying them. He has said mass deportations are an impossibility. We're not going to do them, even after Trump won on them.
Wow.
He turned around and said there are clips of this you'll be able to get. You had Winston Marshall on a few weeks ago. On Winston Marshall's podcast, he said, if politically we alienate Islam, by 2050 we will lose.
I saw that, yeah.
Like, sorry, Nigel, what parts of Islamic theology do you want to incorporate into your party platform? What is winning? Now, it turns out that his company is his party is a company. He's got 2 directors. One is Nigel Farage. One is his former party chairman called Zia Yusuf. Zia Yusuf gave probably about £200,000 in political donations when the party was about to win the election. He's been Nigel's vizier ever since. He's kind of like Jafar from Aladdin. He left the party. He insulted the party. 2 days later, he was brought back in as the head of UK Doge, and he is now personally appointing loads of Muslim candidates to this party, which is topping the polls because it's meant to be the anti-immigration party. So we genuinely have nobody to vote for. The only thing that we have a bit of hope on the horizon, Reform kicked out 2 of its MPs fairly recently. One over some anodyne business thing. The other was Rupert Lowe. Rupert Lowe was elected last year. He's basically our Trump. This is my thesis. 67-year-old granddad, spotless record, independently wealthy, donates his salary to charity every month, and has just been dubbed by a communist organisation called Hope Not Hate the most extreme right-wing MP in Parliament. And bloody hell is he. He's now an independent MP, and he's launched his own movement to try and propose policies. The problem is he's got no party. So he's got absolutely no likelihood at the moment of being the next Prime Minister. So we we're not even where you guys were in 2015. We are like at least 10 to 15 years behind the discourse, and we don't have 10 to 15 years to fix this.
What's going on with speech? Free speech.
12,000 people a year are arrested.
Because that's your antidote.
Kind of, but there's
An
honestly,
antidote.
well, it is an antidote, but there's no talking your way out of the demographic situation. There's no persuading millions of people who live cheek by jowl in ethnic enclaves with the host population.
What does cheek by jowl mean?
Right next to each other.
Okay.
So they live entirely in their own communities.
this.
They don't speak English. We're one of the most densely populated countries in the world, right? London is, England overall is about 70 million people officially. We think about 80 million. We've got 2 to 3 million illegal immigrants on the books that we just don't know where they are. But we have got Muslim enclaves in our country from where the grooming gang scandal, which I'm sure you've all heard about, came from. They cover for each other. They knew it was going on. The head of the Ramadan Foundation in 2016 said the reason Pakistanis don't speak up about this and they'll march for Gaza, but they won't march to clear their names for grooming gangs is because they don't want to be seen as, quote, siding with the white enemy. There is no speaking those people round. It is really just a situation of having millions of people in our country that do not want to abide by our way of life, that hate us, and you're just not going to persuade them.
I also think your king hates you.
Yeah, he does. Yeah. King Charles helped co-found the World Economic Forum. He was recently hosting Ramadan events on royal grounds, and he decided to do 2 camera videos saying that he was saying Quran verses. For some reason, he's obsessed with fostering interfaith dialogue.
He also did give back Canada to the Anishinaabeg and Algonquin people.
Oh, and he also helped hand over Hong Kong to the Chinese in 1997.
Well, that he literally did. He did a land acknowledgement for the Anishinaabeg and Algonquin in Canada as the King of Canada, arguing that they've never ceded this land, implying that he doesn't. He like that statement from him is recognizing he is.
I am illegitimate here.
Right, exactly. That it's an illegitimate claim to the land.
Also, Emmanuel Macron came over about 2 days ago and gave a speech to Parliament. So we let that treacherous frog address it, but not President Trump. And the king then gave a speech at a banquet where Macron and Starmer were present. And he also said, we need to tackle the challenge of irregular migration. They're euphemizing it as irregular. Not illegal, when...
Irregular.
We've had 20,000 men so far this year, 180-odd thousand total since 2018, break into our country via boat from France. We have a literal moat surrounding our country. There should not be a single illegal immigrant coming in, but we still let them come in. The majority are Afghans and Eritreans who commit sex offences at 20 times the rate of a British national. I have heard from, let's say, credible intelligence tip-offs, they're smuggling weapons in and they're recruiting from jihadist camps in Afghanistan. We've already caught multiple Iranian nationals who are spying on behalf of Tehran that came in through this route. So we are just battery farming jihadists at the public expense. It costs us £14 billion a year to house them in 4-star hotels with private healthcare.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So actually, Tim,
Next time I go, I'm just going to lie and claim I'm Eritrean.
just land in France, hop on a rubber duck, come over, and I'll be paying for your bloody hotel.
You just
That's how
call that
you do it.
California.
Yeah.
Or New York.
What does
Or
it
New York.
say about like your system and by large, like European, American, Australian systems where we consistently keep voting less immigration, less immigration, less immigration, and we get the opposite every single time?
Since 1974, in every election and referendum, we voted for less migration.
I don't know, but Donald Trump, he sent in the
Until
boys. The boys are coming in and people are getting pissed.
Yeah.
He just raided a bunch of pot farms, and the left is coming out. I love this. ICE raided marijuana farms and found child slave labor. And the left said they're kidnapping children from produce farms. It's like,
Wow.
Is
But
that what you call it?
how will we possibly drug ourselves to accept living in California if children aren't harvesting marijuana crops?
It's a salient question.
I don't know. I think we should occupy California. Like, I think Trump, the federal government, should go and just put a rigid federal authority over. I mean, listen, this is not unconstitutional. Trump has the authority to invoke the Insurrection Act and go into California and say the laws are not being followed. There are children slaves on these farms. Just with that information alone, Trump can say, he can go light. He can say, Gavin Newsom, I am telling you right now, if you do not give me a report, you don't have to report to me, but I'm saying if the federal government does not get an assessment of the law enforcement against child slave labor on the farms in your state, the feds, we will invoke the Insurrection Act and we will bring militarized control over your state for that reason.
Can you do that after you liberate London, please? You'll be very interested in this. For the last 3 or so months at least, the main topic that's dominated the UK discourse, get ready to drink chat, civil war. Now, we don't talk like this in our country. It's not a thing that we've really spoken about since,
now.
the 17th century. The Brits are quite shy and polite and reserved. But now you've got former government advisor Dominic Cummings, who'd be a fantastic guest on the Culture War, by the way, coming forward and saying, yeah, I was doing riot briefings in 2020. You cannot underestimate the level of delusion these politicians have and their urge to project to the public like they want to still pretend they're in control. And all they seem to be doing is clamping down on people noticing the problem rather than stopping the immigration and multicultural appeasement policies that have led to this problem. And there's an academic called David Betts who works at King's College London, and he's studied war literature for a very long time. He wrote 2 very good pieces in Military Strategy magazine on this, and he's become an overnight celebrity because all he said was, I've just been studying the fact that, well, in the next 3 to 5 years, by all available metrics, you've got divisive identity politics, you've got the state clamping down on the native population, saying that they've become aware of the downgrading in status, and so they can't notice this on social media. They're still importing jihadists, and it's likely we're going to get vigilante attacks on critical infrastructure. So within 3 to 5 years, you're probably going to have a civil war kick off, and you're going to lose 20,000 lives a year. And people are going, well, why are you saying this now? Why aren't you telling the government? He went, I've been telling the government for 10 years. The reason I've gone in front of cameras is because they aren't listening.
Maybe they want it.
Possibly. I would, okay, so there might be 2 groups that want it. Or rather, there might be one group that wants it, one group that doesn't. I genuinely think that we are run by, yes, demented ideological socialists, but also total crippling midwits. There's an interview with Keir Starmer where he says, I don't have a favourite book and I don't dream. I don't think the man has an internal monologue. He says he doesn't dream. It's in The Guardian, genuinely. There's look up Keir Starmer doesn't dream, and it was
He doesn't read either. It's even worse.
Yeah, well, quite. He's also denounced a speech that he gave fairly recently where he said Britain's becoming an island of strangers. It's the only time he was remotely sensible, and he said, "Oh, I didn't read what was written on the cue cards for me." He's just Ron Burgundy running our country. But there is a group that definitely wants some kind of conflict. And
Wow, he doesn't dream.
Yeah. He probably has an IQ of about 100.
Should we have like you've got if you want to be president, they do that thing where they ask you to look on the chart of what an apple looks like in your mind.
Yes.
And then you've got to if you select anything below like at least 5 or 4, it's just like I'm sorry, you're ineligible.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the Civil War talk. It's not surprising because it's like if you have an entire, Carl Benjamin said over and over again, like the Englishman is actually maybe possibly even more conservative than the median American. And it's like if you have a huge contingent of the population who's very angry and they don't have a population that represents them, or sorry, a party that represents them, like what do you think is going to happen?
So this one. Just you bring them in and say, congratulations, you want to file to run for office. Tell me, when you visualize an apple, which number do you see? And Keir Starmer goes 5. And it's like, okay, well, you are ineligible. Now, we can be nice and say 1 through 4 is okay, but 5 isn't.
Do you think you could pass the breakfast test?
I suppose people get upset, though, because they're like, what is it called? It's aphantasia. Is that what it is? When you can't visualize something in your mind? Well, I don't know, man.
He literally wrote the textbook on how to apply human rights law that was passed under Tony Blair to block deportations. He once, I think it was in 1988, he told a socialist newspaper that all immigration law is underwritten by racism. And then we wonder why we're just importing millions of dependent third worlders.
What if there are literal demons? You know, because we talk about mass formation psychosis. I'm somewhat being facetious, but sometimes I look at the zombification of people. Like we were talking with Naomi Best earlier, and she's the story of being struggle sessioned and people saying, you're making us unsafe. And I'm like, are those demons? Like, are these zombies? Are these people conscious, reasoning individuals?
There was a book written by one of the Vatican's lead exorcists where he says that people are primed for demonic possession when they're in a state of faithlessness and chronic vice. And so if you're in a civilization that is godless, addicted to drugs, constantly consuming slop on television, and has nothing to believe in but ideological politics, well, I might think they might be empty vessels. You might be able to convince me that your average
NPC
anti-to protest
It's
is
quaint
like a
that you
gathering of
said
legion.
television and left this out of it.
Well, yeah, this is quite the Black Mirror, but
Yep.
But the only so I am very tech skeptic. The only beneficial thing about this, though, is that this is what's turning a hell of a lot of young men right wing, especially video content, because you cannot deny the downsides of diversity if you are seeing it put in front of you all the time. And this is why our government is obsessed with what Douglas Murray calls second order concerns. They're obsessed with controlling speech online about the thing rather than addressing the actual thing itself. So there's a new independent commission on community and cohesion. It's meant to be like an independent group. It's a state front, right?
Well, Oh, finish.
So they've got there, and they're meant to be investigating the causes of civil conflict, riots, and upset about immigration. And what's their preformed conclusion? Well, there's too much Islamophobia online, so we've got to censor it.
Second, what do you call it? Second order?
Second order effects.
But that makes sense from the analogy that I use. I say that we are chickens in a chicken coop, and it's meant to be somewhat silly, but the general idea is I got a chicken coop. I don't care what they do every day, as long as they make eggs. If at any point there is some kind of tumult, I'm going to say, stop the tumult. I want the eggs. I don't care why they're fighting. I want them to stop fighting. So in this regard, they're saying, I don't care what their problems are. I want them not to know about it. So the famous quote from Harriet Tubman, I've freed many slaves. I would have freed many more if only they knew they were slaves. It's an interesting quote, but when you expand what it means psychologically, it's that if people can't conceptualize of something, it doesn't exist to them. Perception is reality. So if they're saying, look, we've got a bunch of young men that are seeing this problem, is there a way by which we can reduce their ability to communicate to each other so they can't have an organized front? Then the problem is solved. To the farmer, your government, with its chickens, its subjects, it doesn't care why they're mad. Just, you know what we do? This is a really great example, actually. The chickens fight. And they'll have their feathers pulled out, and it causes them stress. And when they're stressed, they don't lay. So you know what we do? We put blinders on their faces. And then they walk around and they can't see anything and they're going like this half the time and they can't peck each other. We have not solved the reason for the fighting. We've just removed the information from them. And that's exactly what they're doing.
We have an entire department dedicated to this in the Home Office, by the way. It's called RICU, R-I-C-U. I call it the Don't Look Back in Anger department. So I'm not joking about that. Whenever there's a terrorist attack in the UK, the government controls the front page of newspapers. They tell them what to run to ensure that the public do not blame Muslims for it.
But to your point, that's exactly why I think the phones are amazing. I think we got into this point, Tim, to your point, like zombies. We kind of like got into this zombie sleepwalking space during, say, like the 90s, the early 2000s. And it's not like you couldn't say your own thoughts, but when basically there was one narrative being put out on all of the networks and there was no, independent media, no way to just, get on your live stream and say things, then we developed this groupthink. We were talking about this earlier. One of the big ingredients of groupthink is self-censorship and the illusion of unanimity. And the more that you believe that you're the only one who thinks something, the less likely you are to speak up and say something different. And then the more that you conform your behavior to fit into what you think is the unanimity that you live in, the more you start to mentally conform to that as well. And so you're absolutely right. I think that, the independent media is making the establishment extremely uncomfortable. I think it's a huge threat in a really good way. And Tim, just one more thing I want to say to your point about demons. I know you were kind of like kidding about that, but
Half kidding.
I'm not sure he is.
It's an interesting little thing I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but in the Bible, are you familiar with I am legion for we are many?
Remind me.
Yeah, so there's this man, and he's supposed to be like the town crazy man. And I'm going to get the story probably not exactly right, so feel free to correct me in the chat. But basically, Jesus comes to him and says, basically, like, what's going on with you? And the man says, I am legion for we are many. And a lot of people point at that and say, okay, that's like some weird pronoun stuff there, right? Like when people start getting confused about we, me, they, referring to themselves in these ways. And so then Jesus basically says, demons, leave this man and go into those pigs. And then the pigs run off the edge of the cliff and die, and the man is fine. So that's the I am legion for we are many story.
I believe in God, and I don't know beyond that what I believe, but I certainly believe I have witnessed things that I don't believe are adequately explained by modern science, which I don't immediately take to mean as magic. I just take it to mean something I don't yet understand or can explain. And I think when people say things like, I don't believe in demons, that's hokey pokey nonsense, my response is, Could there be other dimensions? Could there be a different way to explain the concept of demons in a more secular and scientific way? In which case, the argument is we have simply not yet been able to discover or discern what kind of entities and forces exist out there.
Forms of energy,
Whatever it might be. And the idea that humans have discovered everything is silly. The discovery of the charged electromagnetic spectrum rewrote how we saw reality. And then we were like, holy crap. The discovery of air, thousands of years ago. So I have witnessed things recently that I would describe as paranormal. But when I say paranormal, I mean, we don't just have a means of explaining it, but certainly humans have experienced enough of this stuff and it's been written about that while some of it certainly is made up, stupid, hokey BS, there are legitimate claims and cases of honest, rational human beings who have experienced something that isn't reasonably explained by what we know in science. Now, you can also take a look at the stories of pilots who say there's one recent story where a guy said he was flying a plane and an orb floated to the left of his plane and seemed to lock to the plane so that when he banked left, it moved perfectly with the plane. There's tons of stories of rational pilots saying, not only did I see it, radar picked it up and that guy saw it too. So when I say things like demons, possession, mind control, I think there is a strong possibility that these things actually exist. And I try to rationally explain how it is. The first time I experienced the mass formation psychosis, I had worked at Vice, made a bunch of friends. We went around traveling the world covering the news. We would then come back and produce a video and publish it. A couple of years after that, probably about 2 years after leaving Vice, I said, I am going to go to Sweden. And I got messages from people from Vice saying, don't do it. People I'd gone to reports and field reporting with. And I said, why not? I'm doing literally what I've always done. And they said, because Trump is wrong, so don't go. Oh. And I said, I agree Trump is wrong, and I'm going to go prove him wrong. And they said, no, it's not worth it because you're going to prove him right. And I was like, wait, dude. I was like, you and I used to go and cover these things. I'm doing the exact same thing. And they were like, yeah, but Trump is bad and it's white supremacy, so you can't do it. I got like 4 or 5 messages from Vice reporters saying, do not go. Give the money to a Muslim refugee resettlement thing. A couple people said that, and I was just like, I don't know what you guys are talking about. Then they started calling me a white supremacist. And I'm like, how did in 2 years, people that had an entire worldview nearly identical to mine turn into whatever this zombie is?
social contagion.
Within 2 years, their entire worldview rewritten? Blew my mind.
Yeah, I mean, I think you see the demonic hold firsthand when you watch these pro-abortion activists celebrate having multiple abortions. You can't explain that without demonic intervention. I mean, this is a country that's sacrificed 60 million unborn children onto the altar of the system. Like, how do you explain that without some sort of demonic hold, demonic possession, whatever that demonic is maybe subjective. But
I think Trump has uniquely provoked this because nobody before him triggered the underlying philosophy that actually united both sides of the political spectrum, which again is very much the belief in the blank slate, that all human beings are infinitely fungible. Like, this is, do you remember when George W. Bush, not long after 9/11, gave a speech and he said, I don't understand why they hate us. Islam is a religion of peace. It's like, you idiot. You still think that everyone fundamentally wants the same thing. Recognizing differences is anathema to the ruling political order. And so when Trump gets up and goes, yeah, sorry, no, not all illegal immigrants are good people just wanting a better life. Some of them are rapists and criminals. Yeah, some Muslims are terrorists and we're just going to have to trade off and just not do that. Yeah, turns out that importing loads of Somalians to Sweden recreates Mogadishu. Who knew? That just upsets their liberal sensibilities, and so they out themselves to you.
I mean, you have people that have, this is a generations-long project, this neoliberal world order, and you have a guy coming along that promises to destroy it. Like, your response would be supernatural to seeing that happen.
It turns out the ultimate weakness of the liberal world order was just noticing patterns.
Yeah, go figure, right?
Well, it is interesting, too, that I feel like Christianity is probably alongside Judaism, is a religion that it's like you have free license in our society sometimes to pick on it, right? Like we see comedians or newspapers or whatever just talk about Christians and often Jews in such a disparaging way. And I'm like, I dare you to say that about Muhammad. I dare you to say that about Islam.
They're afraid about threats to their life. I will say, though, so, and I don't really have any antagonism against Jewish people. I've got Jewish friends. Shock. I'm in politics. It happens. It's not cost-free to criticize Judaism. Of course, there is absolutely... I could only describe it as like third world brained Jew-spurging that goes out a hell of a lot, especially after October the 7th. Like a lot of this stuff is just amplified by demented Pakistani bot accounts and things like that. But it is very telling, I will say, that the Trump administration has turned around and said, we're going to denaturalize certain citizens that are not compatible with our country. And one of the criteria was anti-Semitism. Now, it's not necessarily just like hating America is not enough. It is that you specifically hate American Jews. Now, again, I think anti-Semitism shouldn't be done. Fair. It shows that like anti-Semitism still is a powerful taboo post-war for understandable reasons in a way that picking on Christianity does not publicly penalize you, even though the GOP itself is a Christian party.
Yeah,
we naturalize.
Yeah, they said that they will remove the citizenship from certain people. Yeah.
Is there any cases of that? Has anybody been denaturalized?
In the U.S.?
Yeah.
One so far. There's probably been many. But there has been one recently. It was someone from the UK who was a child pornographer. Yeah. And I was talking to Carl Benjamin, and he goes,
"You can keep him."
That's what he said. And I said, no, this one's yours. He take him back.
They're also saying that they'll be doing this to people that have been proven to have lied on their citizenship application, which I think is perfectly valid.
Agreed.
If you lied on your citizenship application and you wouldn't have been accepted, and then that is discovered, I think it should invalidate your citizenship. I don't think there should be anything controversial about that, except I guess apparently I think there's some, I don't know if this is, I'm not sure how much of a case there is for this, but apparently this is being discussed regarding Mamdani.
Yes, I heard this.
So yeah, I mean, I know he lied, I guess, in certain situations.
Well, apparently the accusation was that before he'd become a fully naturalized citizen, he had praised Hamas, and obviously they're a prescribed terrorist group.
And then he denied having had any affiliations with any, such groups or, something. I don't know all of the details, but he's one prominent case, I guess, where that type of denaturalization could potentially come into play.
I'm thinking about the way that Christianity has become the brunt of jokes and the way it's so common. And my instinct is, as a time traveler, and I'm old enough that I've been through many, many incarnations of history, they did themselves no favor by starting to mandate or proselytize in terms of how people should be living their lives. They were the ones that did that first. Now the left's doing it. There was a conservative religious right that was perceived, at least, as judging other people and telling them how they should be living.
That's true.
Americans hate that. And now the other side is doing it.
Don't you think that the conservative Christian right ended up being right about everything?
I'm not judging right or wrong. It's just that in terms of telling people, feeling intrusively, like it's again, this we talked about earlier today, this instinct to have a totalitarian sort of intrusion into people's lives. We should be more libertarian.
No, but on the other hand, what I thought you were also going to say is that the Christians didn't do themselves any favors because they didn't ever stand up for their faith. On the other hand, they also were extremely tolerant of people to make fun of Christians. A lot of people said, like, well, I'm too, cool for that. It's not intellectual, whatever. So I hear you. I think in a weird way, both things are true. Like there was a side of Christian culture that was dominant and judgmental and exclusionary. And then there maybe as like a reaction to that, there became a large swath of Christianity that became almost self-loathing.
And we are both clear that people need a spiritual life and need a concept of something bigger than themselves and really are missing out on faith in terms of their mental health.
Yeah.
We brought that up earlier.
Yeah.
And so we are that, but when it aligns politically, it's the political alignment that I think was the problem.
I don't think it's necessarily the political alignment. I think that the consequences of the mainly sexual revolution they were rallying against were not
sexual revolution.
Yeah, they were not manifestly bad enough to vindicate the Christian conservatives of the 90s.
What do you mean?
So, okay, you did not need a strong Christian conservative revivalist movement as you saw in the 90s before the 60s. it's only in the period between the 60s and the 90s when all sexual norms are destroyed, abortion is liberalized, hookup culture becomes ubiquitous, and vice is celebrated, that suddenly the Christian conservatives have political backlash. And back then it looked fuddy-duddy and out of date.
Yes,
It looked like
yes,
you were incurring
it
on
did.
people because of the delivery mechanism. Now, my generation's hungering for it because very few families are being formed, transsexualism is in the schools, and millions of babies are being killed.
So I was part of that pushback, and we did not intend this.
Yeah.
This is not what we were intending at all. We were more interested in sort of what's real. Like, what is real about the human experience? And we felt like it was shrouded behind all kinds of ideologies then, or Latin phrases. You couldn't call something an STD. It was a venereal disease. Everything was all very it was taken away from the real human experience. We wanted real. That was a lot of the pushback, and we did not expect this. This is not at all what we were.
I mean, me and him were both Gen Z. Like, I think from our Zoomers, I think from our perspective, the big-haired church ladies weren't harsh enough, because I think they saw, like, the Kitty Dukakis saw the guillotine hanging, and that's why they were so over the top, was because they saw what was coming.
I was there, and I will tell you, God, it's complicated because it felt we were casting off the yoke of a generation, and they were the last vestiges of that did not understand us and didn't understand the world we were living in. That was it. And to the extent that sexuality was something that we wanted freedom with, we didn't want to act out in crazy ways. We wanted to not be judged for it. We did not want to be condemned for talking about it. Our music reflected it. The music was crazy, though. I mean, look at the music from the 70s. It's about having sex with 15-year-olds.
You get
a lot of it.
more of what you tolerate, I'm afraid. So even if you
again,
wanted to be non-judgmental, you were opening the door to those.
Listen, I understand. I'm happy you're craving the church lady back. I mean, I think that's a good impulse. Just be careful what you wish for. Like us, we did not intend this.
Well, I just think from our perspective, it's like you can't ratchet back a system to an earlier point and not expect a similar outcome.
Yep.
Like, I don't think you can freeze liberalism at a certain point and
You
just
can't
stay
rewind
there.
the revolution and consolidate its gains. It has to be all undone.
And again, like, I wasn't there, so this is me off of my reading of
Yeah.
history. But to me, it doesn't seem likely that we could just like go back to the 80s and freeze there. Because what I'm seeing now, you could see the seeds in the.
So
70s.
what is your prescription? What is it?
Well, I guess
Bin
in
off the
short,
sexual revolution.
Is
Yeah.
what?
Bin off the sexual revolution.
I guess in short, just
Scrap birth control, scrap no-fault divorce. There should be a lot more sexual shame for weird kinks that you shouldn't be celebrating in public. And turns out, actually, that what you do behind closed doors does affect your personal life.
So let me tell you one of the main weaknesses in the sexual revolution that you may not be aware of. It was perpetrated by adults in the 60s and 70s with no understanding that it would have an impact on adolescents. None. When I went on the radio to talk to adolescents about their sexual behavior, what I heard from my superiors in the previous generation was, why would you talk to them about STDs and AIDS? They don't need to know about that. Why would you even discuss that? There's something wrong with you. That's what I was told. I was told by my residency director that I was sick and there was something wrong with me, that I would discuss sexuality with this 18-year-old. They don't need to know this. That's really where things went off the rail, was the full impact of the sexual revolution. And by the way, it was all based on biology. We had antibiotics for STDs, and we had birth control pills. That's what unleashed it.
Do you know the background of Dr. Drew? He may not know. So have you ever heard of the show Loveline?
I have not.
He would
Okay.
not. He would not.
So, like,
He was at Eton at the time.
in the 80s, I was like 12 years old listening to Dr. Drew on Loveline, like in my bedroom. And I was like, he would always be talking, as he said, about like, maybe sexual things that like
But I was not advocating sexual freedom. I was saying, understand the reality, the consequences of your choices. And we ended up talking a lot about childhood trauma, which was also we went through a pandemic of that in 80s and 90s, and it was emerging in the relationships. We were hearing about it every night.
What year did it start?
84.
Wow.
83.
what year did it end?
God, about 7 years ago or so, something like that. I did 35
really?
years. 35 years.
Wow.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
What would you think?
Oh, I don't know. I assumed somewhere in like the early thousands or something. I had no
it
idea.
wasn't that long ago.
I mean, when I was probably like 14, 15, it was Q101 every night.
Oh yeah, Chicago. It was a
Yes,
great
right.
station.
Yep. And but I largely remember it as responsible. You were advocating
Information.
safety, security.
Yeah, biological reality was my thing, and healthy choices and consequences. But we wanted a freedom to discuss it.
You were
That was
telling
the
people not to do bad things.
Yes, that's weird. Really what it was, the consequences of bad choices. We were listening to little cases where they'd made bad choices, and I was sort of explicating them. And I never would have imagined this is where it all went. Not in a million years.
Do you think there was a point where maybe you and people in line, if you took a stance on a position that you regret at this point, that it went a different direction than you expected it to?
Lots of things. I mean, here we are.
Yeah. Oh, I'm just kidding. 'Cause, like, I was born in the Bush administration, so I don't know what the world was like before everything changed. I was born in, I was 14 when Trump got nominated. So like,
Wow.
this is the world that I've come into and inherited.
Well, that's
Been
why
like this.
you're a bit of an oracle. How about you? Was it?
1998.
Yeah. So you
01,
guys are oracles to me. Like I want to know.
Well, and vice versa. Cause
Please learn from me. I'm a time traveler.
we come with like a lot of like my generation, we do have a lot of, I guess, resentfulness, I suppose, to like older folks, because we do feel like we inherited a mess. But then when I speak to older people, they're like, no, I was there on those issues. And so,
and not only that, we inherited a mess. And
Yeah.
we were busy, again, like I said, casting off a yoke of a generation that thought a lot of itself and actually had a lot to offer. We just didn't know it.
Yeah.
We were busy canceling it all.
because it does feel like from my perspective that, yeah, like maybe the older generations did destroy a system that was actually did pretty well for like human flourishment.
Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.